Hey guys, it's CERN! Are you ready to dive into some seriously messed up stuff? We're talking about conspiracies, the kind that make you question everything you thought you knew. But here's the twist. These aren't just some crazy theories, these are conspiracies that turned out to be true, like, actually happened. Buckle up, subscribe if you haven't already, and let's get into it. Okay, so picture this. 1972, Richard Nixon is president. It's a tense time in America, with the Vietnam War still raging and the country deeply divided. Nixon, a seasoned politician, is seeking re-election, hoping to secure another term in the White House. He's running for re-election, right? His campaign is in full swing, with posters, rallies, and speeches, all aimed at convincing the American public to give him another 4 years. And then, bam! A bunch of guys get caught breaking into the Democrats' headquarters at the Watergate Hotel. It's a shocking event that immediately grabs headlines. These burglars are quickly apprehended and questioned by the police. But the big question on everyone's mind is, what were they even doing there? Why target the Democratic National Committee? Turns out this wasn't just some random robbery. The investigation reveals a complex web of political espionage and sabotage. These dudes were connected to Nixon himself. High-ranking officials in his administration were involved, making it clear that this was a coordinated effort. They were planting listening devices, stealing documents, and gathering intelligence. Their goal? To sabotage the Democratic campaign and ensure Nixon's victory. This was a full-blown conspiracy to undermine the democratic process. The lengths they went to were astonishing. Nixon's like, nope, not me, don't know those guys. He vehemently denies any involvement, trying to distance himself from the scandal. But then, the tapes came out. These were no ordinary tapes, they were recordings of conversations in the Oval Office, actual recordings of Nixon planning the whole cover-up. The tapes provided undeniable evidence of his involvement. Can you believe that? The president caught in a lie. It was insane. The public was in shock, and the media had a field day. Nixon ended up resigning, the first president ever to do so. It was a historic moment, marking the end of his political career. The Watergate scandal is like the ultimate proof that even the most powerful people can't hide the truth forever. It changed American politics forever, leading to greater transparency and accountability in government. Guys, this one is straight out of a horror movie. Imagine the CIA, the super secret government agency, doing experiments on people with LSD. I'm talking about MK Ultra, a top secret program that ran for like 20 years. They were trying to figure out how to control people's minds. They gave people LSD, sometimes without them even knowing it. Prisoners, patients in hospitals, they didn't care. It's messed up, right? They were trying to create, like, super spies or something, but it totally backfired. People were left traumatized, some never recovered. It's terrifying to think that our own government could do something so awful. Okay, we all know smoking is bad for you, right? Like, duh. It's common knowledge now, but it wasn't always this way. There was a time when smoking was seen as a harmless, even sophisticated habit. People smoked everywhere, at work, in restaurants, even on airplanes, but behind the scenes something much more sinister was happening. But did you know that tobacco companies knew this all along? They were fully aware of the health risks associated with smoking. They had the research, the data, and the evidence. Yet, they chose to keep it hidden from the public. For decades, they lied to our faces, telling us cigarettes were fine, even glamorous. They used clever marketing tactics to make smoking seem like the epitome of coolness and sophistication. Celebrities were often seen with a cigarette in hand, reinforcing the idea that smoking was a desirable activity. They spent millions on advertising, targeting young people, making smoking seem cool. They knew that if they could hook people when they were young, they would have customers for life. They used colorful ads, catchy slogans, and even cartoon characters to appeal to kids and teenagers. Meanwhile, they had proof in their own files that cigarettes caused cancer, emphysema, all sorts of horrible diseases. They knew the devastating impact smoking had on health, but they chose to ignore it. Instead, they focused on maximizing their profits. They hid the evidence, manipulated research, all for profit. They went to great lengths to ensure that the truth about smoking's dangers remained hidden. They funded biased studies, discredited honest scientists, and even bribed officials to keep their secrets safe. It wasn't until the 90s that the truth finally came out. Whistleblowers, investigative journalists, and public health advocates worked tirelessly to expose the lies. The media began to report on the hidden dangers of smoking, and the public started to demand answers. Leaked documents exposed their lies and people were outraged. The revelations were shocking and infuriating. People felt betrayed by the very companies they had trusted. The public outcry was immense, and it led to a wave of legal actions against Big Tobacco. Big Tobacco ended up paying billions in lawsuits, but the damage was done. The health consequences of smoking had already taken a toll on millions of lives. The lawsuits brought some justice, but they couldn't undo the harm that had been caused. It's scary how powerful corporations can be, how they put profits over people's lives. The story of Big Tobacco serves as a stark reminder of the lengths some companies will go to protect their bottom line, even at the expense of public health. We must remain vigilant and hold these corporations accountable for their actions. Chapter 4: The Gulf of Tonkin. Incident: a lie that started a war. This one is heartbreaking. The Vietnam War, millions of lives lost, and it all started with a lie. In 1964, the US government claimed that North Vietnamese forces attacked American ships in the Gulf of Tonkin. This was their excuse to go to war, to send troops to Vietnam. But guess what? The attack was exaggerated, maybe even completely made up. Years later, declassified documents showed that the government knew the truth, but they needed a reason to justify the war. They lied to the American people, and it had devastating consequences. It makes you wonder how many other wars, how many conflicts were started based on lies. Chapter 5: COINTELPRO, the FBI versus Civil Rights. So, you'd think the FBI would be all about protecting people, right? Well, not exactly. Back in the 60s and 70s, they had this secret program called COINTELPRO. And what did they do with it? They spied on and sabotaged civil rights groups. I'm talking about Martin Luther King Jr., anti-war activists, anyone they considered a threat. They used wiretaps, spread rumors, even sent fake letters to turn people against each other. It was like something out of a spy movie, but it was real life. They were trying to silence dissent, to crush any opposition to the government. It's scary to think that our own government could be capable of such things. Chapter 6: The Tuskegee Syphilis Experiment, a Betrayal of Trust. This one is just awful. It's a story that shakes the very foundation of trust in the medical community and the government. For 40 years, from 1932 to 1972, the U.S. government conducted a study on African American men with syphilis in Tuskegee, Alabama. These men were promised free medical care, but they were deceived. But here's the thing. They didn't tell the men they had syphilis, and they didn't give them treatment even after penicillin was discovered in the 1940s, which was a known cure for the disease. Instead, they were misled into believing they were being treated for bad blood, a term used to describe various ailments. They let these men suffer, even die, all in the name of research. The men experienced severe health problems, including blindness, mental illness, and death, all while the government watched and recorded their decline. Can you imagine that? Treating human beings like lab rats, denying them basic medical care? The researchers justified their actions by claiming it was for the greater good of science, but it was a gross violation of human rights and ethics. It wasn't until 1972 that a whistleblower finally exposed the truth, and the public was horrified. The revelation led to public outrage, lawsuits, and a formal apology from the U.S. government decades later. The Tuskegee syphilis experiment is a dark stain on American history, a reminder of the horrific consequences of racism and medical abuse. It underscores the importance of ethical standards in research and the need for vigilance to protect vulnerable populations from exploitation. Okay, this one is seriously messed up. After World War II, the US government was obsessed with nuclear fallout, right? So they started this program called Project Sunshine. They wanted to study the effects of radiation on human bodies. Sounds innocent enough, right? Wrong! They were collecting body parts, tissues, bones, sometimes without people's knowledge or consent. They even took samples from deceased infants. Can you believe that? Stealing body parts for science experiments? It's like something out of a Frankenstein movie. When the truth came out, people were outraged. It showed how far the government was willing to go in the name of national security, even if it meant violating basic human decency. Chapter 8: The Iran-Contra Affair, a Secret Arms Deal. Imagine this, the US government sworn to uphold the law, secretly selling weapons to Iran, a country they publicly condemned. That's exactly what happened in the 1980s with the Iran-Contra Affair. They needed money to fund rebels in Nicaragua, so they sold weapons to Iran, violating an embargo. It was a huge scandal, like Watergate level. The president, Ronald Reagan, denied involvement at first, but it turned out his administration was behind the whole thing. It showed how easily power can be abused, how even the highest levels of government can be corrupted. Chapter 9. The NSA, they're watching you. Remember that feeling of being watched? That creepy sensation that someone's listening in on your conversations? Well, it turns out it might not be paranoia after all. In 2013, Edward Snowden, a former NSA contractor, leaked classified documents revealing a massive government surveillance program. The NSA was collecting phone records, emails, internet data, basically everything, on millions of people around the world. It was like something out of George Orwell's 1984. The government claimed it was all about national security, but it raised serious questions about privacy and government overreach. It showed how vulnerable we are in the digital age, how easily our every move can be tracked. Chapter 10. Operation Mockingbird, the CIA, and the media. Okay, imagine this. You're reading the news, watching TV, and you think you're getting the facts, right? But what if I told you that some of those journalists, those reporters, were actually being paid by the CIA to spread propaganda? That's what Operation Mockingbird was all about. During the Cold War, the CIA secretly used journalists to influence public opinion, to spread pro-American propaganda, and discredit communist countries. They planted stories, manipulated information, all to control the narrative. It's scary to think that the news we consume, the information we base our opinions on, could be tainted by hidden agendas. It makes you question everything you read and see. Outrow, the truth is out there. These 10 conspiracies remind us that truth is often stranger than fiction. Which one shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more eye-opening stories. It's a crazy world out there, and sometimes the truth is even crazier than we could ever imagine. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and keep asking questions.